A lot of people are confused about what it means to be perfect. How can a God create a perfect universe yet still end up in a world full of evil? How can God create perfect beings and yet still end up with beings that are sinful? How can God claim to create a perfect place for humanity in the Garden of Eden, but yet place a tree in the middle of the garden that they were not allowed to eat from? How does this make any sense? Well, let's start by looking at what it means to be perfect. See, oftentimes being perfect is interpreted to mean without the possibility or ability to fail. And so, of course, when we look at it from that particular angle, it wouldn't make sense for God to create a perfect world, but yet evil somehow exists in it. It wouldn't make sense for God to create perfect people, but yet somehow they sin. Where do the imperfections come from in a world or in beings in the world that are meant to be perfect? I believe the more appropriate definition of perfect, however, is not without the possibility or ability to fail, but rather with the possibility or ability to fail, yet choosing not to. To not have the ability to fail is great because it would create a perfect world and perfect beings with no possibility of failure, sin, or evil. But it would also eliminate our free will and the ability to choose for ourselves. See, God gave us the ability to choose, but this also put the idealistic perfection at risk, as now we can choose to not do the right thing or choose not to do good. And evil exists because people, we have chosen to use our freedom, to use our free will to do terrible and sinful things. However, it doesn't take anything away from God being a good God or dismiss or debunk the fact that he created a perfect world with perfect beings without sin or evil. All that demonstrates is that God, being a good God, created beings that were perfect in a world that was perfect and gave them the freedom to choose whether they would continue to live in this perfection by following his instructions or choose to do their own thing, which oftentimes leads to perversion. So when the Bible says that Jesus was perfect, it doesn't mean that Jesus didn't have the possibility, capability, or opportunity to sin. He did. Jesus was tempted. Jesus was capable of sinning, and he was a human just like any of us. Jesus had ample opportunity to sin. In fact, the Bible tells us this in Hebrews 4, verse 14 and 15. It tells us that, therefore, since we have a great high priest who has ascended into heaven, Jesus, the Son of God, let us hold firmly to our faith we profess. For we do not have a high priest who is unable to empathize with our weaknesses, but we have one who has been tempted in every way, just as we are, yet he did not sin. Jesus wasn't perfect because he did not have the possibility, capability, or opportunity to sin. No, Jesus is perfect because he had the possibility, capability, and opportunity to sin, but chose not to. So when Jesus then goes on to say, be perfect just as your Father in heaven is perfect, what he is ultimately saying is to be mindful of the decisions that you make day by day and moment by moment, and choose not to do the wrong thing. Choose not to sin, even when you have the ability, possibility, and opportunity to do so. So, what will you choose to do? And as always, think on these things.